Racism, sexism, and systemic inequality are all things that can be unlearned. It'll take education, training, and at times a firm reminder that these things are not okay. For police accountability, I propose 1. We have always-on body cameras on every officer and vehicle. 2. We create a system of fines and rewards. Number 3, we need to change the way internal affairs is done. Maybe if they were being investigated by outside departments and being funded by the departments they're investigating, it would incentivize certain departments to be more thorough in making sure that they're doing their job. And number 4, for betraying the public's trust, the punishment should be great. Stay tuned, and I'll over-explain all of these things for you. What's up, America? Alright, so today I decided to make a video about systemic racism and police brutality. Let's get into it. Alright, so racism is something that gets passed down through false narratives, either from friends or family members that are socially reinforced. It's the same thing with sexism. Things like men are cheaters or women are manipulative. It can even go as far as nationalism. Things like immigrants are criminals. These are all just very, very broad statements that relieve us of the burden of our own actions. Unaccountable people want to blame others for their problems. So, if all men are cheaters, then it relieves all women in heterosexual relationships of the burden of their responsibility in what led up to the cheating. If all women are manipulative, then it relieves men of the burden of having to stand up for themselves or to think for themselves. What people don't realize is that these are basic statements of ignorance and blame. The simple truth is that these are all just basic human behaviors. Humans cheat. Humans are manipulative. Humans are criminals. Being born with one particular skin tone or class doesn't necessarily guarantee that these are going to be your traits. These are traits that have to be learned. This is Officer Uptight. He's in a failing marriage. He doesn't understand how his long hours and need to decompress when he gets home leave him unavailable to his wife's needs. He can't understand why his marriage is failing. He feels powerless. On lonely nights, he turns to the internet, where he sees an interracial scene, and he thinks to himself, if men like that didn't exist, my wife would be more satisfied with me. So he uses excessive force every time he sees a black man, and he loses his seeing interracial couples because it triggers his insecurities and feelings of powerlessness. If Officer Uptight understood his feelings and was accountable for his actions, his life would be entirely different. Now, let's meet Officer Workaholic. His wife left him. He also spends a lot of time on the internet. But he understands that his wife left because he was unavailable to her needs. At work, he doesn't blame others for his problems, and he's well respected in his community. These two officers join the force for the same reason: to help and protect their community. But they stay for entirely different reasons. Officer Workaholic is given a purpose. The job gives his life meaning. He feels good using his power to defend the helpless. Officer Uptight is addicted to power. he feels powerless in his own personal life, and so he asserts his power with a badge and his gun. And this emboldens him to begin taking the law into his own hands and correcting things that he believes are wrong with his community. So if we really and truly want to end systemic racism and the sexist divide, then the key is in education. Alright, so have you ever tried something new that you weren't familiar with at all, and because of that there were elements that you just didn't quite grasp? You thought it'd be easier than it was, or for whatever reason, it just turned out to be just problem after problem that you just didn't know how to quite deal with, and you became frustrated and overwhelmed, and you just kind of felt powerless in the situation until you're just like, man, F this, I'm not doing this anymore. That's pretty much how hatred starts. And the same principle when it comes to racism and sexism is there's that element of non-understanding. We need to start investing in our future, which means in children and in education, as well as in the present, by increasing educational standards to include things such as emotional intelligence or accountability. Alright, so if we want to nip systemic racism, or just racism, sexism, intolerance, whatever, as a broad category, if we want to nip this in the bud, the key is going to be in education and expanding our educational standards to include things such as emotional intelligence and development, the ability to be accountable for your own actions and to process those feelings of shame or guilt or whatever instead of just avoiding them. I think we should also include things like tolerance training and learning how to understand new things and accept that there are things that are different than you and the things you've known so far. So because of the nature of the job, it's going to attract people who seek power, good or bad, which is why education alone isn't enough. We're going to need action now. We need things like always on audio video recorders on the officers and their vehicles. That way we can have multiple perspectives on what's happening in a particular scene. We should create a system of fines and rewards that transfers money out of dirty precincts towards the clean ones that are well run. So local internal affairs is there to monitor what's going on in the precinct to make sure things don't get out of hand, as well as to monitor other precincts, neighboring departments. And complaints by the departments should be handled by rival departments. If every time Officer Uptight did something in excess of his job, his superiors got a pay cut, you could make sure that they're not going to allow him to keep going out there and doing that. Still not enough? I agree! So what about a dirty cop? So, I think that the internal affairs trials should be public spectacles. It should be broadcast on public TV and radio for everyone to see. That way, if the cop is dirty and did something in excess of his job, everyone knows what it was that he did. That way, in the future, other police officers won't do the same things because they'll see what happens. On the other side of that, if the cop is found innocent, he was just doing his job, it shows the community exactly what his job entails and why. That way, they can understand what's going on, and there's nothing swept under the rug. There's absolute transparency, which should build trust. And that is the most important thing between the police and their community, is trust. If they're doing something in excess of their job that in any other context would be deemed criminal, they should be held criminally liable, and if found guilty in a fair court, they should receive the maximum sentencing for the crime, because they have betrayed the public's trust. And once they're locked up, they should just be in general population. They shouldn't get a special cell to keep them safe. They should just stay with everyone else, just like every other person in there that broke equality means equal treatment. Furthermore, any officer that is fired or forced to resign because of their excessive actions should also be ineligible for law enforcement jobs for at least 7 years. Because just like a felon, you have to live with the long-term consequences of your actions. I also feel like they should be put on a list, like a sex offender. Also, to help increase police accountability, I think that the police officer's name and badge number should be lined in some sort of reflective material that is also large and very plain, easy to see, lots of contrast to what's around it, and will appear quite brightly in flash photography. That way, officers that get caught at the scene doing something are more easily identified. That way, we can get rid of the bad ones quickly and efficiently. Hey, thanks for watching. Make sure you like, subscribe, share, and I don't know, if you got time, check out my website, cidpanforprez.com, or find me on Facebook, YouTube, Cid Pan for Prez. Thanks for watching.